Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, Deluxe. Black Sabbath, Mob Rules, also Deluxe. Yeah! Edwin Canistracci here on this gloomy day, an unusually gloomy day in Florida. But that's perfect because we're talking about this band right here, one of my favorite bands, in my top five favorite bands, Black Sabbath. That is right, that's what we're talking about today. Two albums that I never reviewed. I've only done one Black Sabbath video, and I just did the classic Ozzy era in the 70s, my Black Sabbath Halloween special, where I just discussed the 8 albums of Ozzy in the 70s. So I have not discussed Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, the first 2 albums and the key albums of the replacement singer Ronnie James Dio, the one and only. So these are 2 classic metal albums I have not discussed or said how I feel about them or reviewed them, and it's a perfect time to do it because I just recently got the deluxe vinyl edition. So look at this, thing of beauty, look at this thing. And you open it up and awesome liner notes, great pictures and great liner notes, love it, cool back cover, 2 records with bonus tracks. Also got this bad boy, Mob Rules. Look at that awesome album cover. Beautiful album art, as it's meant to be seen large and on a vinyl record album cover. And look at this cool new back cover they got. The Ronnie, the horns, which might have came from Geezer Butler. Maybe not Ronnie James Dio, but he might have originated it. Although Ronnie James Dio, little old Italian grandmother, I feel like she might have done that to fight the evil spirits, because that's the thing little old Italian women do. So maybe it's a little bit of both. I like to believe both Geezer and Ronnie James Dio. Anyway, and you got cool inner sleeve there and liner notes. Also has 2 records and bonus tracks. It's awesome. I've listened to them both and the bonus tracks, and they sound amazing. Rhino did this. Rhino does some of the best vinyl re-releases you'll ever hear. I have the first 6 Black Sabbath albums with Ozzy, all of the Rhino reissues of those, and they sound amazing. There's 6 of the best vinyls that I have in my collection, and these, the Heaven and Hell Mob Rules Rhino re-releases, did not disappoint. They were of the same quality. They sound amazing. It's like hearing the albums all new again. You know, it's amazing. It's a thing of beauty. And not only that, my estimation of these albums has risen, and they were already pretty high. I already loved these albums, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. This is what I used to always say. After the first 6 with Ozzy, I thought the first 6 with Ozzy, Black Sabbath, up to and including Sabotage, I considered that's the high benchmark, and even these albums, Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, did not break into that top 6, in my opinion. That was my opinion for a very, very long time, ever since getting really deep into Sabbath. And I discussed this in the Halloween special, so if you want to hear my history of Black Sabbath, then watch the Halloween special if you haven't already. Doesn't have to be Halloween. Doesn't have to be Halloween to watch the Black Sabbath Halloween special, but you do have to love Black Sabbath or like them. I'm not going to get into all that again. So, but I will just say that I got really deep into Sabbath in the 2000s, in the early 2000s. That's when I did the deep dive into them. And that's when I finally got Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. So compared to some people, I've not lived with these albums quite so long, although it's been like 20 years now. So I've lived with them for like 20 years. But I know there's some people that watch my videos that have probably lived with them since going back. Some of you OGs, were actually listening to this shit back in the 80s. How awesome was that, I'm sure. But it's so even awesome to discover them in the 2000s, because great music is great music. So anytime you discover Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell is an awesome time. So I've lived with these albums for 20 years, and I've always loved them, and I always thought they were the two best albums after the first six. And I did think, even though I like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, I thought they were better than those two albums. And I thought they were better than everything that followed, including Born Again, which I'm not going to tell you what I think of Born Again, because I'm saving that for another video, which I will talk about at the end of this video. It's going to be a cliffhanger. You're getting a cliffhanger ending with this one. So for a long time, my opinion was Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules are both metal masterpieces. They're both great albums. I love them. Ronnie James Dio, easily one of the best replacement singers ever. Very different from Ozzy, and we'll get into that a little bit when we get into the actual review. But my opinion has changed, actually, since listening to these vinyls, and this sometimes happens. I listen to a vinyl, and certain albums sing even more than they normally do to me, and my estimation goes up, and I go, fuck it. These two albums both break into the top 6 yet. I'm not going to tell you where I put them because, well, we'll talk about that at the end of the video. But I have a really high opinion of these albums. Let's just say that now. They have both broken into my top 6. Yeah, that's right. They've entered into my top 6 favorite Sabbath albums, knocking out 2 Ozzy era albums from the top 6. So, wow. And that's no small feat. I really hold those first 6 Ozzy albums in really high esteem. So that's saying a lot for this album. So these are 2 of my favorite albums of all time. Also, for years, I always said I liked Mob Rules a little bit better than Heaven and Hell. They're very close. These 2 albums are very similar, and they're very close in terms of quality. But after listening to the vinyl, I've changed my opinion about that. That's right. I'll just say it now. I think Heaven and Hell is a little bit stronger than Mob Rules. Although Mob Rules is awesome. I love it. So I love both these albums. They're both 10s, They're both perfect albums. Just Heaven and Hell is just a little more perfect. It's just a little more perfect. So I gave that the edge, especially after listening to the vinyl. I was like, God damn, this is one of the greatest albums ever recorded, Heaven and Hell. And Mob Rules is a great follow-up to one of the greatest albums ever recorded. It's like For Those About to Rock after Back in Black. They're both very similar, and even though subjectively these days I do like For Those About to Rock a little more than Back in Black, but objectively I can hear that Back in Black's a little better. And that's how I feel about these 2 albums, except for I did it in reverse. The one that's a little bit not quite as good as the first one was for years my favorite. And now it's Heaven and Hell. Now that they're Back in Black is now my go-to Sabbath album. So there you go. I've gone nuts for Heaven and Hell. I'm getting stupid with love for this album. I'm obsessed with it now. I'm gonna start sending it creepy texts at night. Heaven and Hell. What are you doing? What are you doing right now? Just kidding. I don't want to be canceled. I'm not doing anything creepy to Heaven and Hell. I have boundaries. I love this album, but I've created boundaries. So just so we know, just so we're cool. I'm cool. I'm not losing it. But man, what a fucking album! Fucking Neon Knights, spelt with a K. So they're knights, fighting with swords and shit. Because that's one of the things Ronnie James Dio brought to the band was the fantasy element. Now, I have to say I prefer the Geezer's lyrics from the 70s. I felt they were a little grittier and had a little more substance. Now, that doesn't mean like real world substance, about reality, whereas Ronnie's lyrics they have substance, but they're metaphors. He writes they're very spiritual. They're spiritual, and there's a lot of allegory and metaphor, and they're great. And there's some really provocative stuff there, and lovely lyrics, and they're poetry. Ronnie writes poetry, dark, spiritual poetry, and I love it. But I don't know, I felt like what Geezer did was just a little better, had a little more of an edge, and I connect with them a little bit more for the most part. But these lyrics are great, so I ain't kicking these lyrics out of bed. And, Ronnie and his swords and sorcerers and rainbows and and all that shit. I love it. It's great stuff, and it works with the music, and it's great. And this is the thing about Ronnie James Dio. This is where I'm going to talk about Ronnie James Dio. Little angry Italian guy. Love him. The horns and one of the greatest frontmans and entertainers and singers of all time. I love this guy. Push comes to shove, I'm more of an Ozzy guy. I'm a little more of an Ozzy guy, at least classic Ozzy, if we're talking like 70s and 80s. Ozzy I just connect with a little bit more, especially in Sabbath. And you know, people say, oh, Ronnie James Dio and Ozzy, they have different ranges. You know, like, you know, Ronnie James Dio does have a different range and more range than Ozzy. But Ozzy, man, if you listen to him on Sabotage, some of the singing he's doing on Sabotage, man, I mean, he unfortunately never really sang like that ever again. But he like hit his peak there. And even though he was always a good vocalist and always had the Ozzy personality, man, what he worked towards and what he finally achieved with his vocals in Sabotage, I think he is one of the greatest vocal performances on an album ever. He's really belting it out on that album. So this idea that Ozzy was just more of a low-key kind of singer that didn't really do a lot of stuff, I don't know, listen to Sabotage. He's doing all kinds of crazy shit on that album. But still very different from Ronnie James Dio, and they have a different way of phrasing things. In fact, Ronnie's more different than like Brian Johnson is from Bon Scott. They pretty much become a different band. Like with AC/DC, the band more or less stayed the same. The lyrics were a little different without Bon, but musically and melodically, they kind of stayed the same. They got maybe a little darker, but they were probably heading in that direction anyway, because it was the early 80s. You know, even with Bon, they might have gone a little in that direction, but we'll never know. Black Sabbath, they become a different band for Ronnie James Dio. They become kind of a hybrid of Rainbow and Black Sabbath. And this is to Ronnie James Dio's credit, because Black Sabbath had such a distinct sound in the 70s. And Tony Iommi is such a distinct guitarist. I think the greatest riff maker of all guitarists. That's right. Maybe Malcolm Young might rival him. It's Tony and Malcolm. They're the two greatest riff makers of hard rock and heavy metal. You know, Tony just knocked out great riff after great riff after great riff, and he kept on doing it like into the 80s, and I think even somewhat in the 90s. The man just could keep knocking out great riff after great riff. And man, the 70s and early 80s, forget about it. No, like only Malcolm Young could come close to this guy when it came to the riffs. So Sabbath, in between him and Geezer's songwriting and Bill Ward's drumming, man, and Ozzy's personality too, all that came together to be one of the most distinct and individualistic rock bands ever. You know, there's a whole subgenre, like doom metal is a whole subgenre of people sounding like Black Sabbath, how Black Sabbath sometimes sounded like in the early 70s. But of course, Sabbath themselves were more eclectic and more versatile than that whole army of doom metal that followed them. But that's how distinct Black Sabbath is. I mean, they created genres and subgenres of that genre just with their first couple albums. Such a distinct sound. And I'd say, even though I love Rainbow, I think Sabbath had a little more of a distinct sound and were a little more versatile. But when Ronnie comes in here, he has such a distinct personality himself that you realize half of Rainbow, it wasn't just Ritchie Blackmore. That was a big part of it, but the other half was Ronnie. I mean, listen to Rainbow after Ronnie James Dio leaves, and then listen to him on Black Sabbath, on Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. What sounds closer to the music of the late 70s of Rainbow? I'd say Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules much more than Rainbow does without Ronnie James Dio. And so Ronnie James Dio is bringing, and not too many singers who come and join a band, especially a singer that doesn't play an instrument. They come in a band, and the sound has to change. Like the way he phrases things and sings, and the aesthetic he brings with him, the lyrical content, everything, it just has to change because Ronnie James Dio was such a force in his own right. And that's why he obviously was aware of this, and that's why he goes off to do essentially a solo career. It's a band, his band, Dio, after these two albums. Because Dio in his own right was like his own kind of mini Black Sabbath, a little mini Black Sabbath in his own right. So just as distinct and unique in his personality as Ozzy Osbourne. And probably more influential in the long run. I mean, as a singer, throughout the 80s, you would hear a lot of singers that followed that sound like Ronnie James Dio, including Tony Martin. Whereas Dio came in, didn't sound like Ozzy at all. Tony Iommi replaces him later on after a few other singers. He brings in a guy that sounds like Ronnie James Dio, because obviously that's who Tony obviously probably preferred. That was the singer he liked working with the best, and he liked the music he was doing with him the best. So I think that's very interesting and worth talking about more when I do another video that discusses the Tony Martin period. But right now, let's stay focused on Heaven and Hell, man. I love how this new lineup formed essentially because Ronnie James Dio and Tony Iommi met at the Rainbow, one of my favorite places, the Rainbow Bar and Grill. And they met, and I assume it was at the Power Booth, a Power Booth that I had a birthday party once there. I love the Power Booth. It's where Zeppelin used to hang out and all these people. And right by the Power Booth is actually a framed picture of Rainbow Rising, one of my all-time favorite albums and album covers. So it's cool. I remember, you eating your spaghetti at the Rainbow and you look over at the Rainbow album cover, and how could you not think about how Tony and Ronnie sat here and discussed the prospect of maybe doing something together, because he was out of Rainbow and he didn't have a band, and Black Sabbath had kicked out Ozzy and they didn't have a singer. So man, it was perfect. It had to happen. I can't believe it didn't happen, that they didn't stay together longer, because it was so perfect. So perfect. And a couple days later, they got together and they knocked out Children of the Sea. They wrote Children of the Sea together. One of my all-time favorite songs, Children of the Sea. It comes in majestic, perfect. After the charge of Neon Nights. Neon Nights is this charge which I'd say is very modern sounding for its time. It's still modern sounding. It's timeless music, but it's very new wave of British heavy metal. And that's the thing. This album really pushes them to be running parallel with the new wave of British heavy metal. It's a competitive album to go along with, Motorhead's Ace of Spades and Judas Priest's British Steel and Angel Witch and Iron Maiden's first albums and Diamond Head and all those great bands. This album fits in with all that stuff. It builds on the past while moving them to the future. And you hear it off Neon Nights. And then Children of the Sea, such an epic song. Love the lyrics. That chorus and the way he sounds during that melody, such a catchy melody. It's beautiful. I sway. I get into it. Like, I get into Ronnie James Dio singing the way I think middle-aged black women must get into Whitney Houston. That's what I feel like. That's how I feel when he sings that chorus to Children of the Sea. I love it. And then Lady Evil. Man, funky. It's kind of funky. It's a funky song. And this sounds like it could be a Rainbow song too. It sounds like Rainbow and Black Sabbath smashed together. How awesome is that? And that riff and catchy, and didn't know it was a single actually. It was the third single from the album. Never knew that. There's a mono mix that's on the deluxe edition. Heaven and Hell, the title track. One of the greatest epics of all time, man. Comes with that riff, powerful, doomy. Shows that Black Sabbath still can bring the doom. But then they updated with the bass, Geezer's bass, the boom, 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 boom. And it just takes you on a journey. It takes you on a musical journey. Some of Ronnie's great imaginative lyrics. Love it. Love everything. It's a perfect song. It just takes you place. Like you feel like you go on a trip, a journey. Heaven and Hell makes you feel like you've gone through heaven and hell. It's amazing. And then you got the second side, Wishing Well. A song I used to think was good. I thought it was killer filler, but now I don't think it's even killer filler. I just think it's killer. Man, especially when listening to the vinyl. Here's another thing I gotta admit. I used to think for a long time that they were lying about Bill Ward playing on this album. I did. I always would hear this say, this doesn't sound like Bill Ward. It's a little too straightforward and a little too modern sounding for that time, early 80s. To me, it sounded more like his replacement, Vinnie Appleseed. I was like, I think they're doing like a Creatures of the Night thing. I think they're lying. I think this is Vinnie Appleseed and they're saying it's Bill Ward. I used to think that till I heard the vinyl. And I was like, no, Wishing Well. When I was listening to Wishing Well on vinyl and the way the drums came out, I could really appreciate the drumming on this. And I was like, God damn, this whole song is almost essentially a whole drum fill. The whole song is a drum fill. And it's like, and that's definitely not Vinny. That's Bill. Bill's the guy that would do a whole song that's just drum roll after drum roll and big fills. And there's a jazziness to it. There's a swing. And I think Vinnie Appleseed is a great drummer, but he doesn't have, it's kind of like Eric Carr versus Peter Criss, although on a higher level. I mean, especially Peter Criss can't compare to Bill Ward. But I'm talking in terms of the swing, because Bill Ward loved jazz and he was a jazz drummer. So he brings a little swing, and you hear that. You so hear that in Wishing Well. There's a swing to it, and there's something really magical about it. It's one of my favorite songs now. One of my favorite songs from the album. And it's very unique, and man, it's just these four personalities. That's what I love. I love music that's infused with the personality of the musicians and the singers, and that's what makes it not generic, and that's what makes Black Sabbath on another level. That's why they're up there with with great bands like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and stuff. They're not, even though they created heavy metal and they play heavy metal, and not to say I don't love just straight up heavy metal and even generic heavy metal at times, but Black Sabbath is never generic, especially not this period. And songs like Wishing Well, like, that's the thing. There's a nuance to it. There's a swing to it. A lot of the other heavy metal acts that they followed, they would never do songs like this. And that's what makes them special. Anyway, love that song. Die Young. Oh my God. Another awesome song. One of my favorite songs. Another one that's kind of got a new wave of British heavy metal feeling. Really fast. I mean, this sounds like musically, it's almost like Iron Maiden stuff from their first couple albums. And that's awesome. I love that Paul Di'Anno era Iron Maiden. And this is very similar to that. It's great. The vocals, everything. Walk Away. Hey, this is another song, I think, with Wishing Well. Some people think, oh, that's not so great. It is great. They're wrong. It's awesome. This almost has a slight Van Halen kind of feel. It's it's a little different. It's a little more fun and hard rock for them. And it totally works, though. It works with the vibe. I love the chorus. It's great. And then Lonely Is the World. Oh my God. Oh my God. You just hit me in the heart with this song. And Tony's solo. This is the thing about Tony. Generally speaking, I always love his soloing, and I think he's a great lead guitarist. But ultimately, it's about his riffs. It's really what he's done as a rhythm guitarist it's what I mainly kind of think of him. Like, I think that's his biggest accomplishment as a guitarist, and I think that's what most people think. They kind of think of the riffs, that's the thing, especially throughout 70s Sabbath. It's the riffs that are first and foremost what you think about, and the solo is kind of secondary compared to the riffs. But not in this song. In fact, I think that this is the greatest Tony Iommi solo he's ever done. And I feel his guitar playing on this album, I feel with Ronnie, it was inspired, and he took it to another place. He took his guitar playing to another place, where not only did he continue knocking out these great riffs and continue to be an amazing rhythm guitarist, he took his lead guitar playing to another level on this album. And Lonely Is the World is his greatest guitar solo. That guitar solo at the end is riveting. It's mesmerizing. It's beautiful. It's haunting. It's got passion. I love that guitar solo, his greatest guitar solo. And it's a great way to end this perfect album. It's a perfect album. I'm not going to tell you where it's ranked, but it's in my top 5 favorite Black Sabbath albums now. And we'll talk about the ranking at the end of this video. And then, oh my God, what a great rebirth for Sabbath. They're awesome. Hey, I love Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz, but this is better. I think they did the better of the two albums. So there you go. And then we got Mob Rules, the follow-up. And it starts off with Turn Up the Night. Not as good as Neon Nights, but hey, it's got a similar vibe. It's got that new wave British heavy metal, upbeat, speedy thing going. And it's great. It's catchy. I love it. It's a great song. Like I said, it's a lesser Neon Nights. The lyrics aren't as good, and overall it doesn't have quite the same punch, but it's still great, and it's still a great opening. Voodoo. Woo! Voodoo. One of my favorite songs, that riff. Vinny Appleseed, he's not doing so bad here. He ain't Bill Ward, but man, it's got a good groove. This song has a groove. And Ronnie's vocals, woo! And that chorus, it's voodoo. Man, this is soul. This is Black Sabbath soul. I love it, man. I love this song, Voodoo. Man, you just want to cruise around to this song. Then the Sign of the Southern Cross. This is the heaven and hell of this album. This is the epic. And it starts off with the acoustic, and man, it's like a folk horror movie. It's got that vibe to it. It's got that witchy vibe. I love it. And then it goes into, and Geezer's doing all this cool shit with a bass pedal. You know that sound during the verses? I ain't a synthesizer. That's Geezer using this bass pedal that makes his bass sound like a synthesizer. It's badass, man. I love it. And the guitars, and it's doomy. Again, showing that doominess. And this is actually doomier than even anything off of Heaven and Hell. Overall, I would say this album, which is interesting because Bill Ward's not on it. It's Vinny Appleseed. But for the most part, I'd say this album sounds a little more, it brings in a little more of the classic sludginess from the 70s, mixed in with the 80s stuff. And then you got that E5 150 bass pedal thing. It's kind of like FX, just kind of a noisy thing. There's a little more going to it. I don't mind it. I think it goes on a little too long, but it is a cool effect. And essentially, it's an intro to The Mob Rules. The Mob Rules, what an awesome song. Of course, a lot of you know, it was originally, there was a version of this recorded for the heavy metal soundtrack, that cool early 80s, sexy, cool sci-fi animated film from the early 80s. And that version is included on the deluxe edition. And it's great. It's awesome. I gotta say, yeah, I do prefer the heavy metal version. I love both versions, but I think the heavy metal version is a little rawer and a little angrier sounding. It's just got a little more grit to it. Apparently, from reading the liner notes, they had recorded the heavy metal version at the house where John and Yoko Ono had shot the Imagine video and recorded Imagine. They were on tour, and at the time they went to this house. They didn't have their own instruments, so they just used instruments that were there, which were essentially instruments that John Lennon and the Beatles had used. So they were using Beatles instruments to record the heavy metal version of Mob Rules. That's awesome. I think there's something awesome about them using Beatles instruments to record such a ferocious, kick-ass song. When they were recording the album, that production sounded too different from the rest of the album, so that's why they re-recorded the song and they used their own instruments on it. Although after it was all done, Tony and the band thought that the original version that they recorded with the Beatles instruments actually sounded a little bit better. They liked that version better. There's also a remix version included as a bonus tracks on the deluxe version, and it's good. It's good. It's all great. It's all great. No matter which version of the song and no matter how it's mixed, you can't lose. You know, you might listen to fools, but you can't lose when the mob rules. Man, this song's one of their most ferocious, ass-kicking, pummeling fucking songs they ever recorded, man. Heavier than what any other band could do at that moment. That's right. That's how goddamn heavy Sabbath was. They can do it all, man. And I love this song. Great lyrics, too. One thing I will say about this album is lyrically, I think they also, even though Ronnie's writing the lyrics, he brings in a little of that kind of urban grit that Geezer had. So that's cool. So lyrically, I might put this actually a little above Heaven and Hell. Country Girl, catchy song. It's got that great Tony Iommi riff. Got a swing to it. I love the little breakdown where it gets a little jazzy. That's really cool. I love this song. It's one of their best songs. It's sexy, it's mystical, funky, and hard rocking all at the same time. Love Country Girl. Slipping Away. I'd probably say this is the weakest song on the album, but I still like it. This is what I'd call killer filler. Yeah, it's just them kind of doing a kind of standard, very Led Zeppelin sounding hard rock song. But man, you know, it's got the groove. It rocks. I dig it. Keeps the party going. Slipping Away. Falling Off the Edge of the World. Another epic. The way it builds and all the different parts and the sludgy production. I love it. Love Falling Off the Edge of the World. And then you got Over and Over. It's this dark ballad at the end. Almost depressing. but I love it. It's a beautiful song. Not as great as Lonely as the World, but still great. And that's the one thing. This is why, even though I love Mob Rules and I think it's one of their best albums, Heaven and Hell, especially after re-listening to it, I think it's a little, the second side stronger than this second side. I feel that with the last three songs, although they're all great, I don't think they're as strong as the last three songs on Heaven and Hell. And also, Heaven and Hell doesn't have any fat to it. Like, it doesn't have like an E5 150 that goes on a little too long for my taste. So because of that, and you got Bill Ward on it, doing shit like the shit he's doing on Wishing Well. So overall, I'd say the Heaven and Hell has a slight edge. It has, I think the songs for the most part are a little stronger. It's a little leaner, and both productions are awesome. I love both productions. But I think Heaven and Hell is the stronger of the two. But like I said, I ain't kicking Mob Rules out of bed, even though I might be secretly calling up Heaven and Hell and being weird with it. No, I'm not. I'm not going to get weird with Heaven and Hell. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Just a little weird. Maybe just a little weird. Anyway, love both these albums. The deluxe editions, like I said, they sound amazing on vinyl. The remasters are amazing. Everything sings. Every piece, every note, oh man, it's just like, I'm in ecstasy when listening. Audio ecstasy. And the bonus stuff, it's all right. It's mainly just live tracks. I guess the Mob Rules has slightly better bonus tracks because they include the heavy metal version of Mob Rules, which is great. And it's great to hear it on vinyl, which I never did. And that sounds awesome. And the live performances are great. Actually, I think that for the most part, the live performances are a little stronger than the ones on Live Evil, which is the subsequent live album that they recorded for Ronnie. And after that, sadly, Ronnie and Vinny Appleseed, they had a split with Black Sabbath with this great new rejuvenated band, and they went off to do Dio and Holy Diver and then a bunch of other great Dio albums, and they were all great. So it all worked out in the long run. It's great. And we'll talk more about what Sabbath did afterwards. But I just want to say, overall, these albums are both masterpieces. They break into my top 6 favorite Black Sabbath albums. Heaven and Hell breaks into my top 5. These new remasters sound amazing. The deluxe editions are great. They have really good liner notes, too. I highly recommend them. If you're a Black Sabbath fan, and especially a fan of these 2 albums, you should definitely get these 2 deluxe editions. They're worth the money. They're worth the money. They're things of beauty. And there you go. And I love these albums. What I'm going to do, because I've done the Ozzy era. I did the top... I discussed my opinions of all the 70s albums, and now I've hit these 2 albums. But what do I think about Born Again? And what do I think about like Seventh Star and the Tony Martin era? And what do I think about Dehumanizer and 13? And what do I think about the band Heaven and Hell and The Devil You Know? Well, if you want to know what I think about all that stuff, well, you're going to have to see, because in a few weeks... I'm gonna space it out a little bit, but in a few weeks I'm going to do a Black Sabbath whole discography ranking video. I'm gonna rank every Black Sabbath album. So you'll hear what I think about those albums when I discuss them in my ranking video. So, that should be exciting. That should be fun. I'm definitely gonna do a little drinking for that one. So we're gonna rock out and rank every Black Sabbath album from the first one to 13. I'm going to tell you what I think of them all while I do it. So that should be fun. So I'll think of that as like the 3rd part of this Black Sabbath trilogy. The Halloween special is part 1. This was part 2. And part 3 is going to be the epic ranking video where I bring it all home. So there we go. That's my review of Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. They're awesome albums. Get these deluxe editions and just keep listening to awesome music. Later.